Well, I do what I can,
Yes.
best I can.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, this is WGSN-DB Going Solo Network Radio, TV, and podcast #1 Internet Singles Talk Network. And this is Let's Talk Dating with Christine and Funny Barry. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Christine.
We were saying how he cracks up CC, our producer, and me. He's very entertaining.
Well, thank you. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Seems to be good for us if you make us laugh.
Good. Okay. That's a relief.
Yes. So it's one of the things we can trust you to do is to entertain us, Mr. Selby. And today the subject
Nice
is,
segue.
thank you, how to tell if someone is trustworthy. And it was one of those, I can't remember, it was a couple months ago when we had this subject was like, well, they match what they say is what they do. Done. We had one of those things one day where we
Yeah,
were like, oh, it's just this really easy answer and we're done in 2 minutes. And that was the end of
exactly.
the whole subject, right?
Yeah,
It's sort of
sure.
like that now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the bottom line. Does what they say match what they do? I mean, that really
Right.
is the bottom line. But
Absolutely.
there's so many subtleties. And as we've talked many times, how many times we can miscommunicate and misunderstand. And it's not that somebody's lying, or it's not that you are lying. It's not they're not lying, you're not lying. Definitely lots of the time. And how do you tell if it's lying or misunderstanding? And then what are you going to do if you find out they're lying? Because women so often have been taught to, well, is that going to make me be a bad person? And I want them to like me and I don't want them to get really mad. And we don't speak up when we see something that's like, that doesn't jive
Mhm.
with what I thought or knew or you had said before. And so I think that that's what's going to make this way longer than it has to match what they say what they do.
But and also, I guess in a way, I have to I have to out the men, so to speak, because a lot of men out there have got such a sense of image and presentation that they almost don't want to let people see who they really are. So when they're with a woman, they may not necessarily lie to them, but they might not necessarily tell them the whole truth, especially when it comes to things that are not their best, their vulnerabilities or their weaknesses, or where they're not doing as well as they think. They just hide that stuff away, which is basically the same thing as lying anyway. So you really can't be trustworthy if you can't be real and authentic on all parts of the conversation. So yes, both sides of the conversation, both sides of the gender conversation have responsibility in this conversation.
Personal responsibility.
Yes.
And one of the things I really know about you wonderful men is being trusted, being trustworthy when you're a good guy is super important to you. You
Yes.
want to be trusted. You want to show us that you're trustworthy. You want to demonstrate. You want us to tell us back, yes, I trust you. I know you have my back. I know that you're a man of your word. And one of the challenges, as you just said, is, but can I really show her that side of me? Can I really tell her that about me? Will she think less of me? Will she put me down because of that? Partly because what's happened to you before in your life, in your family of origin, or in your past relationships. So certainly we're going to talk about how you heal yourself, because what I've said, and I've mentioned this before, that I tell people in my personal life when they're getting to know me, I will never lie to you. I
Hmm.
just might not tell you the whole truth in the beginning. I might not tell you all of the whole story. Everything I
Right.
tell you about the story is true. But I have some vulnerable places that I need to see if it's safe to tell you. I need to
Yeah.
see if you're worth me telling you this. I mean, are you somebody that I want you to see that part of me? Do I want to go that discussion? Because I am all about having important discussions in the beginning, but I'm also, you got to cover a lot of the surface stuff so that if you even have stuff in common before you
Yeah.
do all that deep diving. So I think both of us really need to point that out for both sides. Share,
Well,
but not everything.
well, that's the thing is, and it is true. I mean, for men especially as well. It's I can't speak for all men because I'm not all men. So let's just say that what I'm aware of is about what we are like. Yes, absolutely. We love. My feeling is that when a woman trusts us, we feel like it's almost like we feel valued and we feel honored that we have that responsibility to be trusted by the woman. That is definitely part of the conversation, the equation, and the feeling. And that piece about you know the whole truth, but just in pieces. nothing but the truth. The thing is, for me, definitely the case I know for men is that we are absolutely totally fine talking about most things, but there's certain things we keep in a little box to the side. That's those little things we don't share until we're really, really, really intimate, trusting, and safe with our partner. And so it is a trust on both sides, going both ways, of course. But I know, so just to go back to that piece, for men especially, when a woman trusts him, it's much more impactful for him necessarily, because I don't necessarily have women the same energetic response to being trusted by a man as the man is by a woman. So I think it's definitely more leaning one way than the other. But definitely that visual came out so clear for me. It's like men have this little shoebox of things they won't tell her until it's way later in the relationship. So it's building trust along the way for both sides.
Oh, yes. And yes. And when you separated it that way, I was like, wow, that is such a nugget of what is important trust. What's the definition to both sides? Because interestingly, it can be very different. We come at from really different directions and different ways. And certainly for women, I'll say together, both people want to have emotional trust, that the person will guard your feelings, guard your secrets, not use them against you, be a safe place to say just about anything. And then the physical safety is the on top of thing that overshadows so many things about women until they trust you to be physically safe with them. Yeah. Because as we've talked about, it's a high commodity to us women, because even you good guys are still bigger and stronger than us. So our being concerned, being aware, always paying attention if we're someplace unfamiliar, especially if it's after dark, especially if we're by ourselves, which is kind of foolish, but sometimes we end up that way. Like, coming out from the grocery store, I'm very extra careful than I would be. It's not like I don't look during the day, but I really look at night, and I have my button on the thing that'll make my car go off. And I do watch who's around me, where generally guys don't do that. So having a man that is physically safe with you, that will respect limitations if you have them, that you're the person really scanning to make sure that we're safe. That was my husband in spades. It was, I don't think I ever took it for granted. Maybe I would have if we'd been married longer than 5 years and he died. It was something I was so aware of, that he was just there, and if anything happened, he would have it handled. And it's such a relaxing and drawing in thing for us. So the way that you can demonstrate it is doing it and then saying, oh, I noticed, or I'm paying attention to. Because if we're not paying attention to the same things you are, then we'll go, oh, look what you're doing. Oh, really? You did that. And it's hard. It's like you're bragging. I get that. I do encourage my male clients to do this. I just want you to know I got your back. So you're not really bragging. You're like, oh, I noticed that guy over there. So let's walk this way. And you're like, oh, okay. So then I go, oh, he's really watching out for me.
I want to jump in on this a little bit, because
yes, please do.
This bragging piece, I'm going to hold back on a little bit on that one. I definitely have. I've had experience recently, in fact, with a friend of mine, not dating but friend. It's one of the things I've talked about, and I've gotten better at remembering to do when walking down the street with a woman, is to be on the street side of her, so that way I'm closer to the curb than she is, because it's just a chivalry thing. I mean, it's something from way back in ancient times. But it's like when I do that with a woman, 90% of the time she notices, and it's kind of cool. So I don't have to just brag anything or say anything to do that. But that piece about being awareness, something that we do as men, because again, I mean, using Ernest Armstrong's language, like, we're the hunters. So we're scanning for prey. That also means we're scanning for predators. So our awareness is oftentimes on, I'll call it spatial awareness, so in a sense, just being aware what's around us, so that if something that we feel like isn't necessarily safe, or we're not sure about, or we just get a go, and this is for men who've done some work, we have an inner vibe of going, this doesn't feel right, because men don't have a clue about that, but men who've done some sort of work, have an awareness of that sort of thing, then redirecting where we're walking, schooling the woman somewhere else is almost like instinctual for us, because it's safer that way, because we're built is that in our DNA, in a sense, to be that responsive. The thing is, we have to be aware of it for it to happen as much as it is natural, because we're totally oblivious, we'll straight into trouble. But the second part is that, and again, maybe it's just the women I'm hanging around with, they notice it before I say anything. Like, I don't have to say anything like, by the way, I'm taking care of you. Because the thing is, it does feel, in a sense, almost like I'm doing it to let her know. Like I'm not doing it to protect us or to keep her safe. I'm doing it so that I can tell her that, and she'll feel like she'll like me more, which for me doesn't feel authentic,
I know. I know. And I acknowledge that. And I'm okay with that. And if there's a bonus to it,
okay,
try it. See if it works. See how you feel about it. If you've done it a couple times and they go, oh, wow, yeah, thanks. Gets you another thank you that they just didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other piece for men, period, and especially the men that have this self-awareness, is this is where your single focusedness is, I'm scanning. And we're like making our grocery list. And did I forget something in the car?
Tell us about your
as
day.
Much as I'm saying,
yeah.
We're worried about walking through this parking lot, we're still thinking our 12 things at the same. And you're like scanning, radar, scanning. So on top of that, if you're a self-aware man and we're like still doing the grocery list in our head, and did I forget my bags if I'm going to the grocery store?
Right.
And you're like, oh, let's go this way. It'll just be better. Even if you don't say why, a self-aware woman will go, oh, he's looking out for me. Because I will tell you, as much as I notice when men do walk on the outside, I notice when they don't.
Yes.
Because they just don't know better. No one's ever said, gosh, this would make me so happy, or could I walk on this side just in case something happens? Because I don't assume you all know. I'm pleased that so many of you now know, because you keep spreading the word. We keep putting
it's all me. Yeah, it's all me.
It's all on Gary's job. So, and the pulling out the chair because you've made sure there's nothing on it to spoil our outfit, or that it's going to be solid when we sit down. I mean, that's really the reason you do it. I think you like looking at our backside too, but I'm going to say that as a secret.
Keep that quiet.
And you get to smell our hair without doing anything. I mean, I really think it's cool about all that. But it's lovely to do that. It's a gracious thing. It's opening the door because you're making sure it's safe on the other side. You look before we walk through. I mean, that's really how it all got started. And it was an honor. Somehow it got turned around that we're weak. So all these things, if we women go, oh, he's doing it because he's a good guy, and he says good things, and then he does good things, and they match, and he's being trustworthy. I can trust that he's going to keep doing these things. Then the best news is, which is going to sound like best news, is when he does something weird, you're like, huh, what's up? What happened? What's up? And he'll go, oh, I had this really bad day, or gosh, I was so distracted in my single focus doing this. And then you go, oh, because you normally aren't like that, right? I mean, that's really the thing. So then you go, okay, so you don't just fly off the handle and get all upset about some obtuse thing that he's done, because he's got a track record that you've been noticing, or you might point it out.
It's a lot to respond to.
I know.
Part of that is talking about the words and deeds thing. Oftentimes said I said this to clients and also to friends of mine, sometimes is watch what they do, not what they say. Because words can be thrown away. Actions speak louder than words, sort of thing. That context in terms of relationship and get to know somebody is their actions is almost more important, and as much as the words are important too, because you want to be able to trust that they speak the truth and what they're saying is going to be matching what their deeds are. So there's an alignment there. At the same time, their actions tend to be more of a giveaway than their words. For men, that is, especially. Women have that some too, but men have mainly do. And the feeling I have and the awareness I have is for women is that when men do things that cross the line, become too handsy, whatever you want to call that, just too forward. But also when men do things where they forget to open the door, like you were saying, forget to open the door for the woman, or don't even do it, or they say how much they respect women, but their arrogance betrays that by how they act. Like they don't walk with the woman, they walk ahead of them, or they open the door on their own and then let the woman catch the door behind them, sort of thing. These things are so simple but so telling. And this, in a sense, what's happening is that, again, this is especially in the dating scene, the first date, and this has been talked about before, about how you can be so perfect and proper and doing things just the right way and looking so good. But as the dates go on and you get together more frequently, maybe more casually, we'll say the walls come down, but it's more like the pretense falls away. And so if a man on the first date's opening the door and helping you with a chair and all these wonderful things, but you notice when he's talking to the wait staff, he's not being respectful. Or if you notice that the way he takes care of the bill, there's a part of him that's like there's a clenching, something wrong with that. You may not notice to the third or fourth date how that's becoming more aberrant or more obvious or more clear. That what you initially sense on the first date, you really get a clarity on by the second or third date. So trustworthiness in this conversation is something that oftentimes you get the seeds of very early on when you meet somebody.
Yeah.
But it may not be overtly obvious until maybe a few dates down. So as much as, I know for women more than men, generally speaking, again, being very generalized in this conversation, where women will start falling for a man the more they get to know him because they sort of discover who he is and everything else. Don't go into that with abandon, so to speak. Like have along the same, have some guardrails. Is have some sense of awareness that you're watching and observing from a centered place at the same time that you're enjoying the love and everything else, because you don't want to get too far into the relationship and discover when you've been there for a while, the stuff you noticed very early on didn't so much go away. It got worse, in fact. Yeah. So having that self-awareness piece to be aware of what's happening with your partner can, I would say protection is part of it, but also has you be accountable to yourself so you don't give yourself away by mistake.
So there you are, because now you're learning to trust yourself. And isn't that really important? Because that's what we'll do a lot, especially if we really like them and they're really cute. And if we've had sex with them and it was really good, then we're like, and there's this, but ask more questions. No, but I think there's something like, no. And there's this nagging thing that we ignore. And that's when we think, oh, I can't trust my instincts and my intuition. It's because you were ignoring them. So certainly, can you be
let me just stop you there.
Yes.
Because the thing about them, make sure people get is that sometimes we have a bad habit of trusting the other person more than we trust ourselves.
That's so true.
So I want to make sure that was the point. Because you said that, I want to make sure it's clear when people heard what you said. So there. Okay, please continue.
So thank you. That's so true. Because if you want to have a trustworthy person, then trusting yourself, keeping your word to yourself.
Yes.
I'm never going to do it that way again. Okay, I like those words. And how are you going to make your actions match your words?
Oh, God, yeah.
You mean me too? I have to do this besides I'm just watching the other person and how they're doing this?
Yeah. Oh, no, that's the biggest thing is that we have a habit. And this is what I do with my clients to help to break these cycles, because we get to the point where we say, well, I'm never doing that again. And then we just do it again. And we're like, I said I would never do it again. So your self-trust is destroyed because we have this tendency to ignore our calling and what we desire because we got our unconscious programming running the show the whole time. This is a whole other conversation we had before, but as to what I do is really undoing the wiring that we have defaulted into. So we forget to honor what we said because our unconscious programming is easily followed. And so we make mistakes in a relationship. We say, I'm never going to do that again. But then part of us who doesn't think that way goes, yes, I'm doing that again. See, I don't wonder who do you
have all those same reasons to do it again. I haven't changed the reasons, the scared or the desperate or the lonely or the not good judgment or not trusting your instincts. You haven't changed any of that pattern. So how would you not do the same thing again? I mean, really? Right. So I think another way of learning to trust somebody, because it's one of the questions I always ask about people that are divorced, especially, or people that were having problems in their marriage before their spouse died. So what do you think was causing the problem? And generally, they tell you all the things that the other person was doing wrong and needed to work on. And I'm okay listening to that. I want to see how observant they are about that and maybe how gracious they are. And then if they haven't said, I always go, and what do you think was your part? I'm so curious.
Yes. Responsibility.
Because I cannot trust someone who doesn't say, wow, on reflection or in the middle, or wow, since I've done whatever work I've now done, I now see how I helped create
Mhm.
that scenario, how I
Yeah.
was attracted to the person that was wrong for me, or how I even turned the relationship to be a negative place. I mean, that's a pretty impressive thing to own up to. And then I'm like, wow, that gives you more points in the trustworthy department for me, that you've looked at and said, yeah, I kind of screwed up, and it's a human thing, and I'm certainly not going to hold that against you. And then if you say, this is what I've done about it, I'm like,
Oh.
that's that's music to both of our ears when we have
Yes,
somebody
indeed.
in our life that says, I've done personal work.
Speaking of that on another level, just a simpler level in some sense, I have noticed when I've been on conversation with prospective clients, even on dates, where the person I'm with has a tendency to not use ownership language, which is this thing is like, this is taking what you said to an even worse degree, so to speak, in the sense that basically with somebody in relationship never talks about themselves in ownership about I did this or I experienced this. It's always about you did that, or you did that, or they did that. You basically dump all your energetics on the other person. And it's interesting how people have learned to speak this way. I don't know if it's an educational thing, what it is, but when you're listening to somebody talk about themselves, and they keep saying, you know, when you do this and when you do that, and part of me goes, I didn't do that, you did. So why are you saying you all the time? And so the shifting of language into ownership language, which is part of this whole thing about being responsible and saying what it is that your participation was in the relationship, is so profoundly different when you own it, and is what builds trust. Because as I said earlier, sometimes you keep the things in the shoebox. Well, when you bring those things out of the shoebox and you share from an ownership place about the things that you're made to be proud of, not that you play victim to, because there's another part. Playing victim is playing victim is definitely not attractive for a man, but it's also not attractive in terms of trustworthiness either. Because when you start saying, that I couldn't take care of it because this happened, this happened, it becomes something where she's not going to feel safe with you either, because it means you don't have the ability to step up and take charge.
Yeah.
If you say, I messed up this thing up and it didn't work out, and I know where I made the mistakes, kind of the same with you've done the work, is it gives the woman a sense of, she can sense this man's reality, his heart, his authenticity, which again builds trust. So yes, there's a lot of this trustworthiness that is built upon transparency and vulnerability, which is some of the things that we don't necessarily do as easily with people on the first date.
No, and it's understandable, and it's okay. And that's what I will just keep saying. Whatever you say, tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's only this much of the whole truth, say the truth.
Yeah.
I'm not asking, I would just as soon everybody not dump everything. I mean, I don't want to listen to everything, and I don't want to say everything ever. And just know that whatever you're saying, when you go, ooh, but should I say that? Say it a little. Just get brave enough to say a little. So I'll tell you, it was so I've mentioned before that my late husband, when we were first dating, he'd been married twice before and divorced twice before. And when we were dating, a long time into our dating, 5, 6 months, 7 months, he kept saying, I've never had these conversations before. And I know. And it was just, unusual and deep, and me revealing, not only asking him to reveal, but me revealing. And there just were so many moments when we were married that when he would tell me something, he would say, you are the only person I've ever told this to. Hard things that had happened in his life, happy things that had happened in his life. And there'd been all these other people. He had lots of friends, was really close. And so I really honored how much we trusted each other, because I, in turn, told him things that other people don't know. And to know that it was completely honored and safe to not ever be shared, or to not know nobody's ever going to hear it from me, that you go, that is what happens if you stay in the truth all the time.
Yeah.
But you don't have to say all the truth in the beginning. You just keep saying your truth. Because I would watch him and he'd go, okay. And there were lots of times when he'd say, I'm going to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the first couple of times I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. And he would come back the next date and he would bring it up. I've been thinking about it. And here's my answer. Here's my thoughts about that. And he did the same thing with me. I mean, I was not getting off scot-free in these conversations at all. He matched me pretty quickly, not right in the beginning, but certainly did, which was lovely. And that's what you do. You do little tests, put toe in the water. I mean, if that's how you stay with lower numbers emotionally with somebody, even if they're cute, and even if you really like them, and even if you got tons of chemistry with them, if you can keep your emotions at a lower level, because they're like, how do you ask that question? Because I'm not as emotionally invested until I ask this question and I'm comfortable with the answer.
Yes.
And they get to ask the question and they're comfortable with the answer. Then you let the emotional part get more involved and go to a higher number where, I mean, my clients have learned to laugh at themselves now because they're like, oh, I could see why I really used to be tempted and I still am tempted, but I don't go from 3 to 37 after the second date or the second phone call. I go, this is why you don't. Because if you're going to get to be a 37, you're going to do it knowing a lot about this person and a lot about how you feel about them. It's certainly not that a fail safe. You're not going to get your heart broken. Something still couldn't happen. I mean, my husband died, but they could meet somebody else, or they get horribly sick, or, I mean, who knows? We're human beings and so fallible. And what I've told them is not only are you building the foundation in this, so there's two of you that are building your personal foundations, and then you're building the foundation for this third thing. If this third thing called the relationship falls apart, I want you to now know for a fact your foundation is going to stay firm. Yes. Because if you go to here before you feel firm over here, that's when you are devastated and you feel rejected and you never want to date again. And everybody on that opposite sex is a horrible person. This is how it happens because you haven't built up your personal trust about them and they haven't proven it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, they didn't write me back after the first one. I'm so rejected. I'm like, really?
Already?
We're still going to have a conversation about that.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. Be so vulnerable with somebody who you don't know well.
Boy, there's so much you've said. I'm like, what do I?
I'm famous for that, huh, Barry?
Yes, indeed. A couple of thoughts that I'll add to this or mix with this. There's something that's something so clear, and I was actually in a conversation last weekend with some people, actually from England. They were over here doing some work, and I talked to them because I'm English too, so we had this conversation, and they just fresh off the boat. And they was asking, like, what's your biggest tip for that relationship? And I said, well, the truth is, most people think about relationship as like face to face, nose to nose, which is that jumping from 3 to 37, as you put it. But the truth is, really a healthy relationship, and this is the piece that some people don't get, and I didn't get it for many years either, so I know this experience, is that true relationship is not face-to-face, it's side-by-side. And that side-by-side means that you stand on your own 2 feet. And we talked a lot in the conversation about the difference in codependency and interdependency. And it's about being together in a relationship, but as recognizing the relationship, as you said, is the third piece. It's not you together, the other person makes a relationship. It's you together, the other person creates the relationship between you, if that makes different sense. But yeah, so the recognition that you do stand on your own 2 feet in the relationship means if things, to basically repeat what you said, do disintegrate, do fall apart, do have some disenchantment that happens, you recognize that who you are is okay. Who you are is still valid. Who you are, you can trust yourself because you haven't run headlong into the relationship, ignoring all the red flags and everything in between, so that you end up being a place where you're going, hang a second, that's not what I expected, or whatever that is. You get to go, hang a second, I know myself now. And frankly, if everybody entered a relationship from a much healthier place with, how can I put it, honest and whole steps that put you on your own 2 feet every single step of the way, and your partner does the same thing too, you're destined for a much healthier relationship, and the trust is going to be really strong between you. But it takes work to do that, and it takes consciousness from both partners. So frankly, if you and your future partner have seen us first, that might help.
Because it's what we teach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to say it again because I hear it all the time that, you know, talking about honest things, ask along with all the fun, fluffy stuff. I'm happy with all the fun, fluffy, romantic stuff. And also going slowly. They go, it's not as romantic. I go, okay, I hear that argument all the time. And then all the times you keep getting your heart broken unnecessarily, not very romantic either. So here's your choice. Here's a not romantic thing that keeps breaking your heart. And here's a not romantic thing that might actually turn into a really good relationship, or at least you won't get your heart broken along the way if it's not the right relationship. Which non-romantic thing you want to pick, if we're going to call it that. I mean, I give up and go, okay, we're going to call it non-romantic. I'm okay with that because this is such a short period of time. If you really do find your person, hopefully you're going to have a bunch of years together to have lots of romance. So you can have a little less romance in the beginning, not none. I'm not into none. I like lots of romance, but not 37 right away. Romance. Could you just take it a little slow? But that's the argument I get a lot. So this is my latest rebuttal is to say, okay, we're going to do a non-romantic thing.
But the thing, this is again, and we're talking about, trustworthy is the theme of the show today. Trustworthiness itself is not romantic, frankly, but it's a fundamental of a connection in a relationship that can build a bridge. You can build a connection that is reliable and trustworthy. It does require you taking steps that may not be the most romantic, loving, sexy things to do. But the thing is, if you want to have all of that, it's best to build it with a foundation underneath it, which is what trustworthiness helps you do. So, yeah.
What a good point. That's a good point. I love that. I was doing that with a client yesterday. I was talking about how when we go too fast, it's like, I like watching all those decorator shows, and, they have those cement mixers and they add sand and water and whatever it is they do. And they have to keep mixing and stirring. And then they watch the measurement. Is it too watery? Is it too, I said, that's what you're doing as you're doing this pacey thing. How we doing? And is it the right amount? And no, that's not the beautiful house with all the cool accessories and stuff. This is the foundation your house is going to disappear down in the ground if you don't build a good foundation. So yes, it's exciting and fun and interesting while you're doing this to lay this very firm, solid, not going anywhere foundation. So yeah, it just came up. I was like, okay, I'll bring up a cement. I mean, who knows what we're going to talk about each time. That's what's so fun about our conversations, right? We never know what cool visualization we're going to bring up that fits, but it fits, right?
Every single time. That's the thing about the show, is that you hear things from us that you may not be expected, but you certainly get lessons from us that work.
So trusting that the foundation you're building for yourself and the other person, you're checking out to see, do they have a solid foundation? Are they really ready to have a relationship with somebody else? Are they ready for the give and take? Are they ready to have these challenging conversations? That's how you see if you can develop a relationship with them. That's a big part of the trusting part. And also, as you've started going out with somebody for a little while, typically you'll start meeting their friends and they'll meet your friends. And then, it's funny how not only do you listen to how they talk about each other, but what kind of people are they that they hang around with?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that so? Oh, it's so telling. It's so telling. Family, all the challenges we can have with our family. I'm always curious, how did they handle that? Because do I want to be part of that? And the friends, because I like hearing how they talk to each other and talk about each other, but I also want to hear, how are they handling their lives? Yeah. I'm not getting in a relationship with them, but I might be spending a lot of time with them. And what does it say about the person I'm with, how close they are with this person? Yeah. If they're super really good friends and this person's doing stuff, I'm like, oh boy, that really goes against, my morals or what's really important to me. Ooh, how am I going to feel about being with somebody that has a friend like that? That's not an absolute no right away. I have to have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's God, yeah. There was no piece. Sorry.
It's
There's no
weird
piece.
how these peripheral things happen, but it's the truth. If people
Yeah.
don't take this into consideration often.
Something I'm going to add to this just to make it even more spicy, so to speak, is there's a tendency for some people in a relationship when they meet somebody to notice familiar patterns showing up, and they find that comforting, and they start to trust it. Yeah, most of the time those patterns aren't things you want to have because you've had past experience in relationships where it end up being destructive, and frankly, destroying of the relationship. I was playing with 3Ds trying to get Ds in that one. The thing is that when you start to notice familiar patterns showing up, that can be a say warning sign, an indicator of a possible red flag. You don't want to do that again. So, as you were saying before about the non-romantic things, oftentimes when you meet somebody, especially on the first couple of dates, when you like hoping to be romantic, but you don't want to jump in too quickly, is to be inquisitive enough. I'm trying to think the right word for this, but noticing what's happening, because you want to notice first of all. And it's the thing we have a bad habit doing is we ignore the red flags when we meet somebody new. But if you are willing to just be pacing yourself and present yourself and being somewhat patient as you into the relationship, just notice if this person reminds you of past experiences that didn't work, because those can be things that can save you a lot of grief down the road. Mm-hmm. And it's also an indicator that if you do notice that and you choose not to continue down that path because it's not going to work for you, it's again that thing of building trust. When you start to build trust for yourself by keeping your word, but also by noticing and remembering your values for yourself. Because part of trustworthiness also is to really support yourself and honor yourself and have value in yourself. So this recognition that sometimes the most trustworthy thing you can do is walk away. That's massive for a lot of people. So this trustworthiness piece is not just in relationship, but also it's trustworthiness for yourself. How do you choose in or out of a new relationship in the right way for yourself?
Yes. Wow. Yes. And to be okay with walking away. That
Yes.
it's not, and it doesn't even have to be that they're a bad person or they're doing bad things. It's just as you learn about them, you're like, yeah, not me. I can't do that, or I can't be that. I can't be who you are saying you want.
Right.
Sounds like a lovely person, not me.
Mm-hmm.
Or who I'm saying I want, you can't be. And that is so freeing and honest, because so many people really want to be in a relationship and they really don't want to go through the dating process. So they hope that every single person they meet for the first time is the one, and they're never going to have to go on another date with another person again. And that's why we ignore the red flags and don't ask I don't think they're hard questions anymore, but they felt in the beginning. And I understand that people think they're hard questions, and okay, too bad. It's important to ask what you think are hard questions. And so what I keep enticing people with is what you're learning is to be a better person to date. Mm-hmm. You're going to keep learning how to ask questions and how to be more transparent and to be more relaxed and have more fun and not be so intense about it. And they come back and they go, oh yeah, dating is more fun. I go, because if you go with this attitude of what am I going to learn about me? How was I this time? Gosh, I wasn't as nervous. And there were a couple questions I've never asked before. And it was kind of fun. And it was really interesting answers. And I did find out they weren't my person, but brave me that did it. So I get to be their cheerleader for that. Both men and women have this challenge. And then if you ask their question and they're like, gosh, I've never been asked this question before, and let me really think about it. And because I love when somebody asks me a question I haven't been asked before and I have to stop and think about it. And then you answer and they go, wow, I like that answer a lot. I mean, how fun is that? But you're not going to get there if you don't do this thing that feels hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a questing for the unknown question.
Yes. It's when the time goes zipping by. Yeah. I've had lots of conversations with men who were not my guys ultimately. We had really fun conversations about stuff, even if we were so different. because I got to learn about this really different thing. Well, tell me about all that camping that you do for months that I would never do. But I
Yep.
want to hear why you like it. So, I mean, I don't do that anymore because I've learned to ask that question. But when that happened before, it was fun to go, I can really see why you like that. And aren't you glad I'm not out there? Because I'm not taking up any room. You got the whole sky and the thing. And, going out hunting for animals, which I'm not against it, but it's not something I could imagine doing, sitting in a tree in the cold rain to shoot an animal. It's just not me. But I love hearing. And like I was just at this wedding and they were talking about how they go into these caves that are miles down in the earth. And I'm enwrapped. They're like, nobody ever asked these questions. I said, because I will never do it. So I'm going to do this. I want to hear every bit about it. So I never have to do it, but I learned a lot. So that's kind of how I approach my dates. And it certainly seems more fun for me and more fun for them, even if we're not a match. And so if you go, how do I trust myself? I bring it back to the title, which you're always so good at doing, making sure I do that, to say, what am I going to do that's just a little more daring, just a little more different? And I can trust myself to do a really good job at it, even if I'm scared, even if it feels weird, and see what happens. Because it's kind of remarkable what can happen if you do something new and different.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is because that conversation was I was coming up with the same thing at the end of that, which is basically, yes, some things you'll never do, but some things you might say, well, it's not in my wheelhouse, but I wanted to give it a test and see if it worked and just to play it out. Because you might discover a new dance you never done before, or a new sport you never done that you suddenly become enthralled by, but you didn't think about doing it until you met this person. And so there can be great gifts that come from this, but this trustworthiness thing, just to bring it back home again, is that, how to tell if someone else is trustworthy. It's hard to do that if you don't trust yourself first.
For sure.
I want to make sure that point gets made again and again and again, because that's the thing, is that you say, look for someone trustworthy. Well, how trustworthy is the one in the mirror? Because frankly, if you don't have that built strong and firm first, it doesn't matter how trustworthy the other person is, you're still going to find flaws that will basically undermine the trust that they already have. So telling someone is trustworthy is great, but the recognition is that their trustworthiness is based a lot on your own trustworthiness for yourself, because that becomes your frequency resonance in a way, like a tuning fork. Yeah. When you have trust in yourself, it's like you'll feel that resonance in somebody else who's trustworthy as well. And so it doesn't matter how much they try to convince you, you'll go yes, you'll go no, or you'll go yes automatically, because you'll know intuitively. But again, it starts inside always. I mean, and most of the time we talk about in this work, it's always an inside job, but in this piece, it's the self-trust that comes first, because by doing that, you become cleaner in terms of where you're meeting other people, because you own that space. But secondly, is when someone's trustworthy, you'll go, I can sense that, that for that person, which is great.
Yes. So if you feel this, go, let me pay attention. Is there a question I need to ask? Is there something I need to watch for? Just pause and do that. Yeah. Because they get way less. I mean, usually they're just like pounding because you're not paying attention, but they get way less. And then then you'll notice and go, I need to ask a question. I need to know, because then you're on the wavelength of, yeah, I know when this is a problem. I know this isn't going to work. You just know.
Well, the thing I want to just say, because I'm realizing if somebody's listening to the podcast, they won't know you're tapping your own shoulder.
Oh, I'm tapping my shoulder. It's true, because we're on all those audible things.
Audio platforms only,
I'm tapping my shoulder. Like you get somebody's attention by tapping them on the shoulder. Thank you, Barry.
You're welcome. I'm realizing that people listening might be able to see what you're doing. I'm like, oh yeah, you're tapping your own shoulder, because that's the thing, is we do have that inner guidance that will give us feedback. Sometimes tapping the shoulder, but sometimes a smack inside the forehead. Sometimes it's just a little like feeling in your heart. Everyone knows that when that little thing inside just nudges us, when that sort of intuition hits us, whether it does hit us hard or soft or tickles even. Yeah. But that piece is so key to know, is that we will listen to it more, because part of the trusting is to be willing to listen, so not basically ignoring it and shooing it away.
It's funny. I remember Oprah saying once that she wanted to get the message before the whole house of bricks fell on her. Yes. She wanted to get it when the little tap was happening on her shoulder first.
Much later.
Because she'd had a few times when she ignored it long enough that the whole house fell down on her. So I've listened to that in my life. Yes. I would prefer not to have the whole house fall down on my head.
Yeah. Escalation is not fun in that area.
No, but it will too. I mean, that's what happens. And then the world feels like it crashes down around you.
Yeah.
So if you wondered if you're trusting yourself enough, or if you found that you're attracting people that aren't trustworthy, or you're not even sure how to figure out if they're trustworthy or not, that's why Barry and I are here. And we're happy to have a conversation about learning to trust yourself and how to figure out if the other person's trustworthy. So the way to get a hold of me is through my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter. You can also sign up for a complimentary conversation with me. You just click on what's holding you back from love. And then at the bottom of my website, you can click on all my social media, little icons at the bottom, to see me on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Pinterest and YouTube and forgot
Instagram.
what's the Instagram. See, Barry still has to fill that in for me. You can also send me a personal email at Christine@theperfectcatch.com. And please, Barry, tell people how to get a hold of you.
Absolutely. So like Christine, I have a website and also ways of reaching me. My website is my name, which makes it easier. So barryselby.com is my site. Still in redevelopment. It's been going on for months, but my designer is working on it. On the homepage of my website, you can click on a link to sign up for a Discover session with me, which I highly recommend you do. I space in my calendar right now if you want to do that. But so click on the link, you fill in the information and fill out the form, and you can get on my calendar. We can talk. At the bottom of the home screen is a link to join my email list, which if you get my emails, in there are my social media links. But if you want to find out more about what I'm up to, definitely reach out to me there. My social media, if you want to find me, my name is on all my social media except for one. So I am Barry Selby on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, X is now called. Threads, definitely on YouTube where I have tons of videos, and also Pinterest. And on Instagram, it's The Real Barry Selby. That one changed due to some previous mess ups. So The Real Barry Selby on Instagram is Barry Selby everywhere else. Definitely check out our websites. We both have lots of content to share, lots of inspiration, and definitely join our email list because we send out good information every week.
And we love it if you want to watch live here on goingsolomedia.com. And we're here every Thursday at 1 p.m. on Pacific time and 4 p.m. Eastern time and all the times in between. And then you can watch replays, watch us on Roku. And then you can also take us with you and listen to us when you're walking or working out or running errands on Spotify and Apple and Spreaker and what's the other one?
Amazon, I think. There's a bunch of different platforms. Any of the podcast platforms, basically. Yeah.
And so share it with please like and subscribe, and then share with all your friends that are having challenges in their dating and relationship lives. We would love to talk to them and help them as well.
Absolutely. We're here to help. And join us every week because we always bring new stuff to the table.
Yeah. And you can trust us. We're very trustworthy, huh?
But you got to test and verify, That's why we have discovery sessions. You find out what we're about and you can really see if we're really the people you want to work with. That's the whole point. It's got to work on both sides of the conversation. That's how relationships work.
That's how it works. So we'll be back relating again next week.
Yep. See you then.
Bye for now.
Bye.